Preparations are underway in Canada for the visit later this month of Pope Francis. The Holy Father is set to visit 3 cities. He will start in Edmonton, Alberta on Sunday, July 24th. His first public event is the next day with Indigenous leaders. It is the first visit to Canada from a sitting Pope in 20 years. Colm Flynn, EWTN News Rome Correspondent, joins us now with a preview from Canada. Colm, great to see you. So tell us, what is the feeling among the faithful there ahead of the Pope's visit?
Good evening, Tracy, from Edmonton, the capital of Alberta in the west of Canada. And as you mentioned, there is great excitement here in Canada because this is the first papal visit in 20 years, the last one being Pope John Paul II, who came in 2002. And just before we came live to you, we finished an interview with Archbishop Richard Smith. Not only is he the Archbishop of the city of Edmonton, which you can see behind me, but he's also the national coordinator of this entire papal visit across Canada. And during the interview, he spoke extensively of just how significant this visit will be to the Catholic Church in Canada, to the people of faith, but also, and most importantly, to the Indigenous community. The theme of this papal visit is walking together. And Tracy, that really is what the focus of the Pope's visit here will be. The Catholic Church, the Holy Father, walking with the Indigenous community. Their church, the church in Canada, the nation of Canada, having been shocked by stories that have come from the residential schools over the past number of years of how the Indigenous communities have been treated throughout the years.
Yeah, and Colm, we know those school scandals, really rocked the people of Canada and really impacted the Indigenous people. What more can you tell us about the Pope's expected meetings with these communities?
Well, the stories, when you hear them, are harrowing and devastatingly sad, Tracy. There are 3 main Indigenous groups right across Canada, and Pope Francis is expected to meet with representatives from each one of them. Here in Edmonton, where I am at the moment, the Pope will travel around around an hour south, where there is the remains of an industrial school there, a residential school. The Pope is expected to go there and meet with some survivors. So, Tracy, you can imagine just how poignant and powerful that will be as the Pope stands there in front of the building which once was one of these residential schools. These schools were operated across the country of Canada from the 17th century right up until the mid-90s. So relatively recently as well, the last ones were closed. They were owned and operated and run by the government of Canada, but in many places the day-to-day running of the schools was handed over to the Catholic Church in different religious orders. Now, the main aim of these residential schools was to assimilate the Indigenous people. They were forbidden from practicing their faith, their own forms of worship, which they had been doing for so many years before that. They were even forbidden from speaking their own language. There are many stories that have come to light about abuse, both physically, sexually, and beatings that took place in so many of these schools across Canada, particularly here around Edmonton and in the west, which is why this will be so significant for the Pope to come here. This will be one of 3 steps. He's coming to Edmonton, Quebec City, where he'll meet the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, and then he'll go very north to an island region called Iqaluit, with a population of just around 7,500 people. That's on his final day. Again, he will meet the people, he will listen carefully, he will hear their stories before returning once again to Rome.
And Colm, do we know, is the Holy Father expected to make an apology, a formal apology?
We don't know for sure, Tracy, if he will make a formal apology because it's not in the official schedule, but the likelihood is that he will. That's what is expected, and that is what we believe will take place. But it's important to note, Tracy, that Pope Francis has already apologized to representatives of the Indigenous communities, the 3 main Indigenous communities that I mentioned, who travelled to meet the Holy Father at the Vatican earlier this year. He met them across an entire week, spent hours with them, listening to their harrowing stories. The Archbishop who we interviewed was there in attendance as well, and he spoke very movingly about this. At the end of those meetings, the Pope apologized to the Indigenous communities for the role that the Catholic Church played in running these residential schools and in its role in the suffering it caused to the Indigenous people. But Tracy, earlier today we met with an elder from the Sacred Heart Church right here in Edmonton, and his name was Fernie Marty. He spoke about how that did bring some healing, the apology already given by the Pope, as well as the apology that was given, we cannot forget, by Pope Benedict XVI back in 2009, who also met survivors from the residential schools. But he made a great point, Tracy. He said that the land is so sacred and so important to Indigenous people here in Canada, the soil, the land that they walk on. So to have the Pope here, to have who they see as the chief of the Catholic Church here on Canadian soil, standing in front of the residential schools on that land, and to issue the apology here on this soil that I'm standing on, they think that that will be hugely significant and will hopefully be a major moment of healing and a massive boost on the road to reconciliation for the Indigenous people here in Edmonton and right across Canada.
Yeah, definitely important indeed. Colm, thank you so much for your reporting.
Thank you, Tracy.